Ode damo, quare tvaciam fortassere quiris, nescio, sed fieri sentio et excrucior. Gaius Valerius Catullus was a poet from Verona during the late Roman Republic in the 1st century BCE. Whilst his name is unknown by most people, in classical circles he is beloved by many and still a source of controversy, debate, and above all, enjoyment. His poems focus on his love life, his relationships with friends, his experience of loss, his monetary problems, and the world around him. The poem that I read out at the beginning of this video, Ode et Amo, I Hate and I Love, is a prime example of why he's such a controversial figure. That and all the explicit stuff, because his poems are short, sharp, to the point, and introspective in a way that's just not there for many of his contemporaries. This goes hand in hand with the kind of poet that Catullus is, a neoteric. What is a neoteric poet? Well, it's Greek poets like Theocritus and Callimachus, whose style was a departure from the grand epic we see in Homer, and had a much more personal and pastoral focus. And poetry does not get much more personal than that of Catullus. See, for example, 101.
Accipe, fraterno, multum mananti affletto, atque in perpetuum, frater, ave, atque vale.
That poem was dedicated to Catullus's recently deceased brother. The rest of the poem describes the hopelessness and futility of saying farewell to what he calls mute ashes, as well as the poet's unrestrained grief over such a tragic event. The poem is extremely popular amongst those who know their Catullus, because its deeply, deeply personal nature means that it's still able to spark empathy, even 2,000 years later. The final words of the poem, Ave atque vale, hail and farewell, are still used as the titles of everything from songs to military events. This continuing empathy with regards to loss is just one of the reasons why you should read Catullus. His love poetry, for example, is also very #relatable, especially those relating to his on and off lover Lesbia, whether he's showing teenage-esque fawning for her,
Vivamus me lesbia atque memus, rumoresque senem sueriorum, omnes unius estimemus assis.
or whether he's crying over their breakup.
Nulla potes mulier tantam sedicere amatam, vere quantam a me lesbia amata me est. Nulla fides ulo fuetum quam foedere tanta, quant in amore tuo ex parte reperta me est.
He even does semi-comedic poems about how manly he is and how he's going to represent this to his detractors in ways so graphic that such poems were banned until the 20th century. Take, for example, poem 16.
Pedicabet ego vos et rumabo, Aurelii patice cnaide furi, Cimex versiculis meis putassis, quod sunt moliculi parum pudicum.
Through both his poems about love and loss, we see a deep psychological picture of an artist in a time of social and political upheaval, trying to deal with both his personal and artistic problems. This kind of insight is extremely rare, and a large reason why Catullus's poems have persevered for so long. Because he's a neoteric, his poems aren't big and epic, and that's why they're so great. We see Catullus try to understand himself as opposed to far away history and myth, and come to terms with his own life through his art. But there are exceptions to this. Arguably, Catullus's most well-known poem, or certainly his longest, is an epeion, or mini-epic, based on the marriage of the mythical king Peleus to the sea nymph Thetis, the mother of Achilles. The poem begins with some of my absolute favourite lines in ancient literature because they're so packed with detail and nuance and little phrases which Virgil uses as well, and I love them. The poem starts with the Argonauts going out on their journey.
Peliaco quondam prognatai verte cepinus, decuntur reliquidas Neptuni nasi perundas, fascidus et fluctus et fines Aeeteios, cum lectia juvenes argiva aerobura pupis, auratam octantes holcis averte repellem, ausi sunt vada solsa quita da curere pupi, cae rula verentes abiegnes saecora pamis.
From the offset, one just expects this to be the retelling of a story from the heroic age, especially with the decuntur in the second line, meaning they are said in relation to the pine trees, something which is called an Alexandrian footnote. Yet later on in the poem, through a device called Ekphrasis, the description of art to tell a story, he jumps to the illustration of Peleus' lavish bedspread, upon which is woven the story of Ariadne, the abandoned lover of Theseus, the guy who killed the Minotaur. In this part of the poem, Catullus in effect becomes Ariadne. It is very obvious that he is using a character of myth to vent his own romantic frustrations, especially in moments when Ariadne will directly address Theseus.
Illa vicem curans totex de pectore Teseu, tot animo, tot appendebat perdita mente.
From here he cuts to the departed Theseus, suddenly forgetful of the promise he made to his father to hoist white sails if he came back to Athens alive after killing the Minotaur. And then he cuts to Theseus' father Aeetes, praying that his son makes a safe return, and then to Aeetes' subsequent suicide. So we see the shift from a seemingly unrelated mythological story to a focus on loss of love and loss of family, two extremely prevalent themes in Catullus' poems. Through the retelling of the story of Theseus, Ariadne and Aeetes, Catullus has been able to show his own personal connection and empathy with stories much older than his own civilization, which is exactly what we do with Catullus. Before I get to the conclusion, I'll say a little bit about the ending of this poem. We go back to the story of Peleus and Thetis, and during the wedding procession, the Fates themselves sing of what is to come for Peleus' son, Achilles, and it's one of the most brutal, twisted, morbid moments in the entire poem, as they sing about rivers running with blood and the instances of human sacrifice to come, including those of Iphigenia and Polyxena. A really disturbing topic for a wedding song. The final lines of the poem are almost a kind of lament, wherein Catullus first describes the mythical age of heroes, wherein everyone was pure and just and virtuous, and then goes on to describe his own time as one where brothers drenched their hands in the blood of their brothers, and that with all things speakable and unspeakable, the people of his day have turned the minds of their gods away from them. So here we see Catullus using his art to critique his own time with regards to its social problems, given that it was written in the midst of violent societal change in the late Republic, whilst also coming to terms with his own losses in life. And this is all done via the means of retelling stories and myths passed down through the ages, so we see almost a personal connection with religion in there too. Throughout all of his poems, Catullus' blend of sensitivity, wit and sharpness are able to make a poet from 2,000 years ago so relatable, given that he is perfectly able to express how he feels and why he feels it. Whether it's anger at a friend betraying him or musing on the lives of politicians, Catullus both brings to life his own feeling and gives an almost unparalleled picture of the world in which he lives through writing about these various relationships. And that is why you should read Catullus, because not only can he perfectly describe love, jealousy and rage, but ultimately he shows us just how pervasive our emotions can be, and maybe, just maybe, he can help us to better understand ourselves. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video or if you want to learn more about Roman and Greek stuff. I've put a bibliography in the description for those who want to learn more about Catullus or his life, or his poetry, or the context in which his poetry was written. The translation I used for this video was Daisy Dunn's 2016 translation of Catullus' poems, which I'd really recommend because it's awesome. It's so up to date. Great. The commentary I used was Fordyce's Catullus, which is especially useful if you're going through the Latin text because it shows you all the various nuances of different words. and it's really, really cool. The Latin text I used for this video was the OCT, the Oxford Classical Text edition of the Catullus CARMINA, and this is my prized possession. And so, finally, are we at CATVLLI?